What's going on, guys? My name is Jake. That's Jesus. This is your body comp prescription, where we help you navigate through all things health and fitness. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at bodycomprx. We are not doctors or nutritionists, so keep that in mind as we start the conversation. But Jesus, what are we talking about today for episode number 2?
Hi guys, welcome. Thanks for listening. So today, episode 2 is kind of picking back off of episode 1. Today we'll be talking about keys to fat loss, our tips and tricks to that, and kind of like the science behind fat loss. So
Perfect. Yeah, I think the best place to start is with the best thing that we got is being in a calorie deficit. A calorie deficit is basically consuming less calories than you burn throughout the day, and that's important because if you don't do that, you're either just going to maintain or you can actually gain weight. So calorie deficit, a good place to start would be around 200 to 500 calories, just because if you go more than that, it could be a little bit too aggressive and you run the risk of just losing weight and not necessarily losing fat. You can lose some muscle as well, so we don't want that. Going between 200 to 500 calories is kind of the range you want to stay in, because you can either be conservative or aggressive.
yeah, so it's kind of like depending what route you take, whether you're conservative and start at like a 200, which is okay, it's not a bad thing, or if you want to go more aggressive and start at 500, taking out 500 calories from your normal diet. Our main goal is kind of something Jake and I always preach, is having a high quality weight loss. What that means is that you want to make sure you have high ratio between your muscle mass, so making sure you look nice and strong, to your fat mass. So we're decreasing our fat mass and increasing our muscle mass. And kind of a reminder is, when you're in this fat loss journey, it's not always going to be like on a downward slope. You're not going to see 1 week you're going to drop 2 pounds, 4 pounds, 6 pounds. It's not always going to be going out. It's actually, I like to say it's a roller coaster ride, because first week you may drop 10 pounds, and then the following week you're up 2 pounds, and then you'll drop only 1 pound the following week, and it's just back and forth. But one good thing to remember is that this is a journey. It's not a short term. It's not a 2-week thing. It's not a 30-day thing. It's going to be months, maybe years. And you'll see that if you're tracking your weight and tracking your fat loss, you see that go down, up, and back down again. But like I said, it's a long journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then so with that said, Jake, what do you think is a good tip we should give to our fans?
One of the things that I think gets overlooked a lot in any fat loss journey or diet, or whatever you want to call it, is the amount of protein that gets consumed. I think people immediately they think of the calorie deficit, right? They just know, I got to eat less than what I burn. And even though that's still correct, protein is a huge part of how you're going to look at the end of your journey. Because what most people don't realize is they're already consuming less protein than what they already need. Usually, until you track, you usually don't know. Mm-hmm. And the amount of protein that you need, especially to sustain muscle, let alone build muscle while you're losing fat, is really high. So my biggest tip is, whatever you're eating, try and eat some more. And the reason that, even though that may sound a little like counterintuitive in the aspect of going back to the calorie deficit, the benefit of eating a lot of protein is that it has a really high thermic effect, and you'll end up burning more calories as you in consuming protein versus a fat or a carb. So 1 gram of each, you'll end up burning more calories processing that, like through metabolism, from protein over a fat or a carb. So, if you were to eat the same amount of calories worth of carbs as you do protein, you will actually lose more weight from consuming the protein side, even though it's the same number of calories, if that makes sense. That's probably my biggest thing.
Yeah, I kind of like to explain that a little bit further. Our body naturally, with the protein that we consume, we're making proteins, and then our body also naturally breaks down proteins, right? So kind of like I like to explain it, when you're at a resting state, I guess just to make it simple, when you're resting, you're sleeping, just laying on the couch, right? Your body is naturally breaking down protein, and if you're not consuming your reaching your goal of daily protein you should be eating in your diet, you become at a negative state, right? So because if you're only eating X amount of proteins and your body is breaking down a ginormous amount of protein in your system, you're at a negative balance. So kind of to fight that, you want to increase the amount of protein you are consuming. So then when you are at rest and your body is naturally breaking down the proteins, hopefully you're at an equal balance there. I kind of wanted to share a personal story. Um,
Yeah.
like maybe about 2 years ago, Jake and I or mainly myself, we were counting my calories, right? Looking at how much protein I was eating, and I thought, coming from Mexican household, you're always consuming chicken and like steak, and I'm like, dude, protein's easy. I love protein, right? Dude, I did not realize how hard it is to actually reach your protein goal. I was not like I was just tracking my calories normally, and I quickly realized I was like, I don't need enough protein. I was like, I'm in this fat loss journey, but I was not consuming enough protein. I had to find ways to increase the amount of protein I was consuming during that weight loss journey.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of like my biggest takeaway. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was like, dude, it brought me back when I first started trying. I was like, oh my God, nowhere near that goal.
Yeah, usually when you ask someone how much protein they intake, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry, I eat chicken for like every meal," and even though
Yeah.
that's their answer, they don't know how much chicken they're eating, or they don't know, like, I don't strictly preach like tracking macros and knowing the exact number of grams of protein that you eat per day, because that gets a
Hmm.
little bit tedious over time. But until you actually track for even like 2 3 days to a week, you don't realize how short you are until you're forced to do it. Because again, going back to what we said earlier about protein being important for um, the breakdown process, but is also for burning extra calories um, during metabolism. It's super important to keep that high if you're trying to maintain muscle while losing weight, and that's what we're talking about, is fat loss. So
Hmm.
if you lose all this weight, that's awesome. But if you look like I mean, I don't mean to be rude, but like if you look like a stick by the end of it, it's not really going to be as satisfying as it would if you were to maintain all of your muscle throughout, from day one to day whenever it's finished.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just
And
my two
it
cents.
goes back to having a high quality fat loss program,
Mhm.
because it's not good quality if you're just slimming down, but you're also losing your muscle mass. Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
Any other tips?
any other tips for fat loss?
Mhm.
For me, I think I think I previously said in like the intro that I used to be a trainer as well. One of my biggest tips is walking, honestly. I think what gets overlooked is how powerful walking is as a fat loss tool, because
Mhm.
I personally hate running. Like I'm definitely not someone who enjoys cardio, like there's very I think Jesus enjoys cardio more than I do, since he did track and cross country in high school. But like I personally don't like it, and I know that there's other people that don't like it also.
Yeah, it's not for
And
everyone.
walking is so easy to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you can walk on a treadmill, but honestly, there's something so like therapeutic about going outside for like a 30 or a 45-minute walk. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You burn more calories than you think, and it's so much more. It's such a lower impact on your body than running or a stairmaster is, or even an elliptical.
Hmm.
And I just think that gets overlooked a lot. So I would say walking is a big one. What about you?
Yeah. So I think walking is definitely one of them, but kind of my biggest like underrated fat loss technique, right? It's easy, cheap, and quick. Getting a full 8+ hours of rest
Mm-hmm.
and staying hydrated. And obviously I have here daily exercise, but daily exercise could be anything. Obviously you want to hit the gym, you want to, get a full exercise in. But if getting that daily exercise is parking at the end of the parking lot and walking all the way to Target,
Yeah.
that helps a lot. I think it's very underrated, the amount of water we should be consuming and the amount of sleep we should be getting. Because if you're doing everything right, you're eating well and you're exercising, but you're not, you're getting 4 hours of sleep every day, it's kind of counterintuitive. And vice versa with anything else, if you're not consuming enough water, it kind of defeats the purpose.
Well, just to piggyback off what you're saying about sleep, because I do agree that that's a huge part of the things that get overlooked during any, whether it's fat loss or it's muscle building, it doesn't matter. That gets overlooked every single time, because what we neglect about sleep is that that's when all of the important things are happening. That's when we're recovering from everything that we're doing. So, because even though you're exercising every day, whether it's resistance or cardio, it doesn't matter. If you're exercising, that's great because you're putting yourself in a calorie deficit. But if you're not resting a sufficient amount, you're not going to recover and be able to perform the best that you can the following day or the following days after that. So you're only as good as your sleep is, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a really good one. It definitely goes underrated.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think, do you have any more tips to share with us?
I think, like, as far as fat loss goes, a lot of people want to talk about like diets. Like they hear the word diet and they like shrivel up and they like hate the word diet, But
Start panicking, yeah.
yeah, everything we eat in a day is our diet. You shouldn't have to go on a diet. You have a diet, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. But
Oh, yeah.
not getting too deep into it, I think one of the flaws that I see with diets in particular is that people completely flip sides from what they normally do, and pick something completely random because they heard their cousin Johnny did it and it worked for him. You know,
Mm-hmm.
oh, my cousin Johnny just did keto and he lost 50 pounds. Well, that's great for, Johnny. But if you're eating, 200 plus grams of carbs a day, you like pasta, you like rice, I like cookies, but
Tortillas.
yeah, tortillas. If you eat a ton of carbs, keto is not for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're gonna end up in a bad place by following something that you can't do for a long period of time. I
Yeah.
have no vendettas against any diet, but if you pick one, it should be um, something you're able to do, and it should be somewhat similar to what you already do on a day-to-day basis, just like tapered back, not completely switching sides from, again, like eating carb dense meals and then flipping to keto. I
Mm-hmm.
think picking one that makes sense for you is huge, and not just listening to what cousin Johnny said worked for him
Yeah.
necessarily.
I think this is a good time to plug our episode 1, right? If you haven't listened to it yet, that's kind of what we talked about there. When you're wanting to lose weight, you're wanting, this part of your New Year's resolution, you want to choose something that's realistic to you, because not everything is, tailored perfectly for you. And I think it'll be a good idea
Mm-hmm.
to choose a diet, or choose, if you want to do something like that, choose something that's going to be realistic, something that you're capable of. I'm not going to come out here and say I'm going to go vegetarian, because I know I
Oh,
enjoy
dude.
eating meat, but that's just for me. And for others,
Yeah. Yeah.
I know people out there who, could gladly be like, oh yeah, like I could live without eating red meat,
Yeah.
eating chicken. So, they'll gladly decide to go vegetarian.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we have
Uh-huh.
no vendettas against any like preferences as far as diet and nutrition goes. It just has to be sustainable for you. I think
Uh-huh.
that's the summary.
Yeah. And,
Um,
yeah, and
Go
think,
ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, when you're dieting, it's, you could choose, like, kind of like going back to episode 1, we said you could choose one thing and then you could, decide that's not for you and you can move on. The
Hmm.
fact that you're even going, starting a diet, starting this fat loss journey, it's a huge step within itself.
For sure, for sure.
Hmm.
Um, getting back to fat loss and in particular though, and like kind of some tips that we have in order to help you burn more calories or increase your calorie deficit. I would say that midway through, like when you're let's say you're going to be dieting for 12 weeks, right? When you're about 4 to 6 weeks in, that's when I would say you would want to increase your cardio, because I personally don't count cardio as part of my deficit when dieting, because I think that's another mistake that gets made is people eat the exact same, but they make their deficit exercise based. So um, if their deficit is 500 calories a day, right? They'll go on a stairmaster and burn 500 calories and then think that that is a good enough deficit in order to achieve their goals. When in reality, if they take that from their diet and then add cardio as the tool in later, you won't have to do more and more cardio as you go. Because if you're already in a 500 calorie deficit, you don't need to do another 500 calories worth of cardio on top of that. Because if you're starting with cardio as your deficit, every time you start to plateau, you will have to increase your cardio. So if you're doing 500 calories a day, you're then going to have to move to 700, 800, 1,000, and it's just not really that worth it, in my opinion. I think the easier thing to do is to clean up your diet and then use cardio as a tool to help you break through plateaus later on, if that makes sense.
No, dude, I think that's a huge key. I think we even talked about it in school. Is like if you could, have this calorie deficit be strictly within your diet and not counting your exercise, that's a huge. You'll find yourself reaching that calorie deficit a lot easier, because you'll be cutting back foods, bad foods, and and on top of that, you're working out. You'll only see results much quicker. I think another good tip is there's good and bad calories. One thing you want to really look into your journey is what you're consuming. Is it good for you? Because you could, in theory, you could eat really bad junk food and still lose weight.
Yeah,
right?
and still be in a deficit.
Yeah, and still be a deficit, right? But you want to make sure the food you're consuming every day is food that's going to give you long-lasting energy. Food that's not going to make you feel sluggish. Food that's not going to make you feel so bloated, right?
Yeah.
You want to choose calories that's going to make your body feel good. And then in the end, I think you'll find yourself actually feeling good. If you work an 8 to 5 job, you won't feel so sluggish at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll still feel full of energy.
Yeah, I agree. I think I got one more. I think as far as fat loss goes, I am not on a fat loss journey. I'm actually on the longest bulk of my life. Currently running about 4 years. But as far as tips that I have in regards to dieting to make those those caloric changes within your diet, is to substitute foods that you already eat with healthier alternatives, right? So if you like peanut butter, I'm sure you've heard of PB2 by now, or PB Fit, or powdered peanut butter, whatever you want to call it, right? You get the same amount of technical servings, but with lower amounts of calories because they extract fat from it. So I don't know how that process works, but they do. And also, like for me, I like making fried rice, whether it's chicken, shrimp, doesn't matter. When I'm dieting, I'll switch over to riced cauliflower, still get the same amount of volume of a meal, but with lower carbs and lower density of calories. And that goes across the board. You can find so many alternatives at the grocery store as far as lower density of calories in order to help you stay in that calorie deficit that you need in order to lose weight.
Yeah, I think covering kind of, I don't know if you said replacement, but I've heard a lot of people say like, oh, you know what, for lunch, I'm going to do a smoothie. It's going to be a meal replacement. I'm not saying meal replacements are bad, but I definitely think we should be consuming our nutrients and like our protein goals through actual meals, right? I
Okay.
think you'll find yourself, it'll be a much richer diet in that sense because you'll be able to consume. There's a lot of good nutrients that come from just eating your, your veggies, your chicken, or any
Oh,
whatever
tons.
kind of
Yeah.
protein, right? So, and if you're consuming it through a smoothie, I'm not saying that it's not good, but I definitely could make an argument that you get a lot more nutrients through an actual meal.
Well, I think kind of piggybacking off that, you're specifically talking about like meal replacement, like shakes, right? Like that's what you're kind
Yeah.
of talking about. Yeah, I agree because I mean, when you do a meal replacement shake, you're dealing with supplement companies and processed foods and stuff like that. So I don't know that that's a good idea, and I think we can all agree on that, anyways. But what you do by consuming your meals throughout the day and consuming your nutrients as close to evenly throughout the day, like spread out through meals or whatever, you'll give your body a better chance to absorb as much of it as possible, right? If your macros for the whole day are 180 protein, 250 carb, and 70 fat, and you eat it all in, an intermittent fasting window of like 6 hours or something like that, chances are your body is not going to absorb that, not all of it for sure.
Hmm.
When
Yeah.
you're giving your body time to break down, we're not even getting into hormones of how that affects your ghrelin and insulin and all that kind of stuff, but it just it makes it easier on your body's digestion and metabolism in order to spread that out like that, I would
Oh
say.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good advice. It's really good to summarize. Cool. Do you have any last comments, any last tips before we call it a day?
Yeah, one last thing, I think it's has to do with like progress pictures and weighing yourself and stuff. Figure out from the start what is going to make you the most accountable, because
Mm,
you if you take pictures every single day and you're not seeing the progress that you want, it may discourage you to an extent, and we don't want that. So maybe doing weekly pictures would be better.
mm,
Same thing with the scale. If you know that seeing your body weight go up like 0.2 pounds after losing 10 the previous, like, 2 weeks, that's going to set you back into remission. Don't do that. you know you have to figure out the schedule in which you want to do those things, because that'll help you more as opposed to hurt you. But
yeah.
vice versa, if you need that extra accountability where you see, oh man, I gained the 0.2 pounds yesterday, or from today to yesterday, and that would push you even harder to stay on track, then by all means you can do that too. Just figure out which side you're on, I would say,
No, no,
because
that's good.
yeah, I would say a lot of people don't identify that early, and that
Hmm.
ends up harming them because they hear progress pictures and scale, and then they don't like what they see early on, and then they stop. So
Yeah.
figure that out early, and that'll help you over the long term.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that kind of like summarizes today's episode because we talked about having a high quality caloric deficit, you know, eating well, choosing how aggressive you want to be, and also understanding this weight loss journey, like how I mentioned earlier in the episode. It's not going to be simple as just going to be dropping weight the whole time.
Yeah,
Understanding how it works and understanding that it's a long term thing, it's going to be very beneficial to you.
yeah, I
So yeah.
agree.
All right.
All right. Yeah, that's all I got. I guess I'll say thank you first. Thank you guys for listening. Um, Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope this was helpful. I guess we will catch you in the next one. Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for watching, guys. If, like we always say, if you have any comments or any recommendations on how to improve this podcast or anything you guys want us to talk about, please, by all means, feel free to share that with us in the comment section.
For sure. All right, guys. Take care. See you in the next.
Peace out, guys. Thanks again for tuning into our podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you who took the time to listen to this week's episode.
If you enjoyed the conversation, we would love it if you shared this with someone who would find this helpful. Be sure to check us out on Instagram at bodycomprx for more tips and information. We'll catch you guys in the next episode.